live with this. And when you come in, do me a favor. Hit the like and subscribe if you have not subscribed, because I really need you to. I really need you to. And number two, I wanted to go live with this because I watched this late last night. I could not sleep. And I watched this late last night, and I had no idea that this trial was going on. So I'm going to be going live with some of the people that will be getting on the stand of Tyre Nichols, and this is Tyre Nichols' mom. I saw today a little earlier one of the police officers that are being charged in his unaliving. I saw that he was on the stand today, but like I said, I always like to start from the beginning. So let's go live with the mom.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
All right, please have a seat. Watch your step. All right, you can proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Ms. Wells.
Good afternoon.
Will you introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please?
Hello, my name is Robon Wells. I'm the mother of Tyre Nichols.
Ms. Wells, will you spell your first and last name for the court reporter and for the jury, please?
My first name is R-O-W, V is in Victor, A-U-G-H-N is in Nancy, last name Wells, W-E-L-L-S.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. You mentioned you were the mother of Tyre Nichols.
Yes,
Tell the jury, are you married?
yes.
Who is your husband?
Rodney Wells.
And how long have you and Mr. Rodney been married?
It'll be 13 years in November.
You mentioned Tyre was your son. Do you have other children?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about your other children, their names?
Kiana Dixon is my oldest daughter. Michael Contreras is my oldest son. Lindsay Dupree is my middle son, and Tyre is my baby.
Ms. Wells, are you a native Memphian?
No,
Can you tell the jury when you moved to Memphis?
I moved to Memphis in 2008, March of 2008.
And I want to draw your attention back to the time of January 2023. At that time, where were you living in Memphis?
It's 6743 Castlegate Lane.
And who lived with you at 6743 Castlegate?
My husband and my son Tyre.
Where were you employed back at that time in January 2023?
First Horizon Bank.
Was Mr. Rodney Wells employed at that time?
Yes.
And where did he work?
At FedEx.
Was Tyre Nichols employed at that time?
Yes.
Where did he work?
At FedEx.
Did your husband and son work together at FedEx?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention specifically to the date of January 7th, 2023, a Saturday. Tell the jury what you remember about how that day started, and specifically your interactions with Tyre that morning.
Well, when I woke up that morning, Tyre wasn't at home. He came in about 11:30 that morning. There was a co-worker that was teaching Ty how to drive the forklift. So Tyre would go in on Saturdays, and he would teach him how to do the forklift. Tyre, like I said, he came in about 11:30. We spoke briefly. He went and laid down. He got up about 2 o'clock or something like that. He took a shower, messed around the house, and about 3:30, he was on his way out the door.
And as he was on his way out, did you have a conversation with him before he left?
Yes, I was actually in the kitchen. I was taking out some food for dinner that night. He asked me what I was cooking, And he said, Mama, are you getting ready? Are you cooking some chicken? And I said, yes. And he said, well, how are you going to make it? And I said, well, I think I'm going to do sesame chicken today. And he just kind of bugged his stomach. Okay. So about 3:30, he was on his way out the door. He hugged me and said, I'll see you later.
Did he enjoy your sesame chicken?
No, he never made it home to enjoy my sesame chicken.
Tell the jury what's the next thing you heard about Tyre that day.
Well, about 8:30, I say about 8:30-ish, 8:45, somewhere up in there, we got a knock at the door. My husband and I, we were getting ready to watch a basketball game. I was complaining about my stomach hurting earlier. So he decided to come in the room with me and watch the game. And we were just going to lay across the bed and watch the game. We got a knock at the door. Bang, 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 Memphis police. My husband went to the door. I heard a gentleman say, does TYRE NICHOL'S live here? My husband, he paused a second, and then I came to the door, and I said, yes, TYRE lives here. I'm his mother. What's going on? They proceeded to tell me, the police officer that was at the door, it was actually 2 police officers at the door. One proceeded to tell me that Tyre was arrested. And I asked them why he was arrested. And they said for DUI. And DUI, that didn't sound right to me.
And tell the jury, why didn't that make sense to you?
Because my son, he doesn't drink like that to have a DUI. We're not drinkers in our families. So Ty would barely drink a beer, or something. So it just didn't seem right to me. They proceeded to ask me, was he on drugs? Did he do any type of drugs? And I said, no, we don't do any type of drugs. Smoke a little marijuana. And I said, why? They said because he had all this wild strength and all this strength and everything, and they had to end up pepper spraying him and tasing him. And that still didn't sound right to me. And I made a statement. Well, if all of that happened, then somebody must have put something in his drink or something if they were saying all of this stuff happened. So the officer told me that they're going to be taking my son to the hospital. I asked him where my son was, and the officer said he was nearby. And I said, nearby? And they said they were going to take him to the hospital because he had been tased and pepper sprayed. I said, well, okay, what hospital is he going to? I need to go. The officer told me that I could not go because Ty was arrested. He proceeded to get some more information from us and everything, and then they left.
After those officers left, what did you do next?
After the officers left, I started kind of pacing the floor a little bit. I got my phone, and I started trying to call my son. He didn't answer. I told my husband, come on, let's go. Let's go find Ty. He took a little too long, and I had jumped in the truck, my SUV, and there was another police officer just sitting out there. So my husband came. We were going to take the route that we thought, Ty would come home. And because they were saying that they were taking him to the hospital, we just kind of assumed that it would be St. Francis because that's where normally they take, people. So as we got into our vehicle and we drove to Rains and Castlegate, we made a right on Rains. No, we made a right on Ross. I'm sorry. We made a right on Ross. We got down to Rains and Ross. And that's when we noticed Ty's car.
Now, that intersection at Ross and Rains where you see Ty's car, how far is that from your house, Miss Wells?
Probably a half a mile.
When you saw Ty's car there, what did you do?
We immediately pulled over and I got out the car and I started speaking to the officer that was there. The officer asked me again. It was a different officer. He asked me again, was my son on any type of drugs or anything, because he just had all this strength and all this Hulk Hogan strength and everything, and they had to do all these things to him in order for them to arrest him. And I kept trying to find out why they were arresting him in the first place.
And did that officer you were speaking with at Ross and Rains answer that question for you?
I really, no, I don't recall. He just said my son was pulled over for a DUI and he ran from the police. I think that's what he said. I can't remember if he
And did you come into contact with any other officers at that scene, or just one?
There was another officer there. They were gathering up the tape. He spoke to me, the officer did, and he handed me his card. After that, we left and went back to the house.
At that point, what is your plan? Are you waiting to hear more, or what were you doing during that time?
Well, when I got back home, I called my daughter, because I was actually on the phone with my daughter prior to the police coming to the door. And I called to let her know, Ty's been arrested. And she said, what? And after I explained to her what was told to me, we were both kind of baffled about it. And I said, well, there's nothing I can do tonight. I don't even know where he is. I'll just figure it out tomorrow and I'll let you guys know what's going on.
What is the next thing you heard about or from Ty?
About 4 o'clock in the morning, I received a phone call from a doctor from St. Francis Hospital. The doctor asked me if I knew if my son was in the hospital. I said yes. I heard he got arrested and he was tased and pepper sprayed. The doctor said, no, ma'am, your son is sick. And I said, what do you mean he's sick?
Yeah, I checked to what the doctor said, other than some of the premise behind it, she can't go into what his diagnostics are.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Since they are back from
Specifically what
okay,
he
here we
said,
go.
did you
Yes, they
become
wanted us
extremely
to
concerned
blur
about
out
Ty's condition?
approaching the bench.
Yes, very concerned. Until to the point where I called my cousin and I said, get over here right now. We need to get to the hospital and go see Ty.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
Who went to the hospital with you at that time?
My cousin Tony, she came over to meet us, and my husband and I.
What hospital was Ty at?
At St. Francis Hospital.
And tell the jury what happened when you walked into St. Francis.
As we were walking into St. Francis, there was another officer walking in. We were kind of going in the same direction, so I asked, you working late tonight, huh? He said, yes. He said, I'm here to sit with a prisoner. And I said, well, is the prisoner's name TYRE NICHOL'S? And he said, yes. And I said, well, that's my son. He said, oh, okay, well, follow me. So we all proceeded to walk to Ty's room.
Ms. Wells, I know this is going to be difficult, but I want you to explain for the jury when you went in Ty's room, what you saw, what Tyre looked like, what you saw, what you felt, what happened in that moment.
When I walked into the room and I saw my son, I immediately went over to him and I fell out on him because my son was beaten to a pulp. His head was the size of a watermelon. His nose was broken. His neck was split open from the swelling. He was bruised from head to toe. It was like they beat the shit out of him. That's what they did. They beat the shit out of my son and left him for dead. That's what they did.
And Ms. Wells, were there other officers in that hospital room when you walked in?
The doctor was there. There were some other officers in there. Once I saw my son and I basically passed out on him, basically. I just laid on him and just started crying. And I just burst out and said, what the fuck is going on here? This does not look like no pepper spray and no tasing. And a police officer took my husband and I out the room. My cousin stayed there and took us into another room. I want to say it was a sergeant or captain, I can't remember. We spoke briefly. And then next thing you know, all the Shelby County police and everybody was out the room. They said TBI had taken over the case. And all the police officers that were there were gone. And so it was just the TBI, the nurses, the doctor, and my husband and my cousin. We were in the room with my son.
When you saw your son, was he ever responsive to you that night?
No. TYRE was not responsive. He was on a breathing machine, and the machine was keeping him alive.
And did you know from the minute you walked in that room that night that your son was gone?
Yes. You couldn't. There's no way my son would have survived from that. He was already deceased, basically. I say they must keep him on those breathing machines for 72 hours. But my son was deceased.
Ms. Wells, several days after that, did you get a call like that from the hospital on January 10th informing you of your son's passing?
Yes, I got a call a little after 2 by the same doctor, Charles. I want to say Charles, I can't remember. I meant to look, I can't remember. He said, Mrs. Wells? I said, yes. He said, this is Dr. from St. Francis Hospital. I said, yes. He said, I just called to tell you that I pronounced your son deceased at 1:41 p.m. And I just lost it. I dropped the phone and I lost it. 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 Because the first thing I had to do is try to figure out how I'm going to tell his siblings that their little brother is deceased. That was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do as a mother, is to explain to them. I called my daughter. When I explained it to her, I heard her falling down the stairs. She cracked her nose. And the fact that I'm from California, all my kids still live in California. So it was very difficult to not be there to tell them. I called my middle son, my oldest son, Michael. I told him, I don't even think he even heard me. And the reason why I say that is because a couple days later, he called. He said, Mom, what's going on with my little brother? Why haven't you called and told me anything? I said, Mike, Ty is gone. And he just lost it. He was like, what do you mean he's gone? I said, I told you Ty didn't make it. And he lost it. And then I had to call my other kids. My middle son, I had to call him. And then my god kids, and everybody just started. Everybody knew at that time. Yes, that was the most hardest thing that I ever had to do as a mother, as a parent, to tell the siblings that your baby brother is deceased, and really for no reason at all.
As well as at the time that Ty passed, how old was he?
Ty was 29. He was a 29-year-old young man still trying to find his way in life. You know, he hadn't found his way yet. He was getting there. He loved to skateboard.
As well as, I'm going to pass you a picture. Can you tell the jury what you see in that photograph?
My happy TYRE.
And is that what TYRE looked like that day he left your house on the afternoon of January 7th, 2023?
Yes. He didn't have on his suit, but yes.
Your Honor, I would ask this be marked as Exhibit 2.
All right, we will just go ahead and first enter the stipulation on the record for Exhibit 1, and then we will show the picture of Tyree Nichols as Exhibit 2.
Your Honor, permission to publish.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wells, looking up at the TV screen here in the courtroom, is that the photograph of Tyree?
Yes.
Is that what he looked like that afternoon when he left your home?
Yes. Yes, that's what he looked like.
And Ms. Wells, after this occurred, you'd been told, you mentioned that the officer said that night that Tyree was nearby.
Yes, nearby.
Did you later find out that the events in this case happened at Castlegate and Bear Creek?
It was later on, actually my son, they were looking at different videos and things of that nature, and they realized that this had happened in a neighborhood. And as they started putting two and two together, they realized that it had happened in the first cul-de-sac of our subdivision.
And tell the jury, if you can, about how far from your front door to where this happened, that cul-de-sac where Castlegate and Bear Creek is, how far away is that?
About 80 to 100 feet.
Ms. Wells, I'm going to pass you another photograph. Ms. Wells, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yeah, I recognize
And can you tell the jury what you see there?
my son beaten to a pulp
And where was that picture taken?
at St. Francis Hospital. My husband actually took this picture.
And is that what he looked like when you first saw him?
Yes. As we were walking in, and I saw him, and as I was walking over towards him, my husband took this picture.
Your Honor, I ask this be marked as Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No.
We'll show the photos of Mr. Nichols in the hospital as exhibit 3.
Your Honor, permission to publish.
Okay.
Ms. Wells, looking at the TV in the courtroom, is that photograph you just looked at?
Yes,
And is that what your son looked like when you first saw him that night? Or the
yes,
early morning hours of
Early
January
morning.
8th?
yes,
At some point after Ty passed, did you all have a memorial service for him?
yes, we did.
And when and where was that, Ms. Wells?
It was approximately, I can't remember the day.
That's okay.
I'm drawing a blank on the funeral home, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's okay. Did you have a service here in Memphis?
I did. Ty actually had 2 services.
And if one was here in Memphis, where was the other?
Both of them were in Memphis.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one moment, please.
This way.
We pass the witness.
Mr. Perry?
No cross-exam, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Mr. Lupton.
Thank you, Your Honor. As well, my name is Steve Leffer. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to refer to your son as Mr. Nichols.
Thank
He
you.
deserves that respect.
Thank you.
And so if I use Mr. Nichols, I'm talking about your son. Not only are you the mother of Mr. Nichols, you're also the administrator of his estate. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as the administrator,
Your Honor, may we approach?
Well, guys, I am going to try.
January
They're gonna
7th,
continue
2023.
to go live.
Okay? Okay. Tell me about that night.
Maybe I'll keep this going for a minute. because this is
I was
one of the
working, smoking
officers.
music, and me and Bean, we had someone under arrest for a traffic stop violation.
Well, actually, I want to do this one separate.
When you
So
say
I'm going
Bean,
to
you
end
mean
this one
Darius
here.
Bean?
Yes,
You see him in the courtroom today.
yes, I do.
Can you point him out and tell me what he's wearing and where he's seated?
It's a navy blue suit, blue tie, blue shirt.
I think he nodded at you, but what seat is Mr. Payne in?
I wanted to end this one here because I wanted to do the other ones separate. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will continue to go live with some more if I get a chance tomorrow. Again, thank you. When you come in, hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you.